Thomas Grimshaw was born out of wedlock to Thomas Grimshaw Sr. and an unknown woman on April 6, 1819, in Pendleton, Lancashire, England. At the age of 19, Thomas and his girlfriend, Jane Wardle, gave birth to a boy they named Edward, and just a few months later, on July 29th, they were married in the market town of Eccles, located in the Greater Manchester area. By 1841, Thomas was working as a power loom weaver in a textile mill to provide for his family, which now included a 9-month-old baby girl named Elizabeth. And on April 20th, 1846, Thomas and his family arrived in New York City. They eventually settled in Fall River, Massachusetts, where Thomas found work in another textile mill. Jane gave birth to a son named Alfred here in 1850, and another son, James, in 1853. In 1855, Thomas became a naturalized citizen of the United States, and his daughter Mary was born. That same year, he left his family in Fall River and made the perilous journey to Salt Lake City, Utah, arriving there in 1856. On October 7, 1861, Thomas enlisted in Company E of the 3rd California Volunteer Infantry in Sonora, California, and he was soon stationed at Camp Douglas, a small military garrison about 3 miles east of Salt Lake City, Utah. On March 22, 1863, the Goshoot War Chief Whitehorse killed the Overland Stage Company operator of 8 Mile Station, along with his war party, and then hid inside the station to await the next stagecoach. When it arrived, the Goshoot Indians opened fire, and the stagecoach driver, a man called Happy Harry, was mortally wounded by arrows, along with the man riding shotgun beside him. As Happy Harry slumped off his seat and the horses bolted in fright, a passenger climbed out of the stagecoach and took the reins, driving the stage to Deep Creek Station, where news of the attack quickly spread. The very next day, near the Nevada state line, Canyon Station was attacked by another group of Goshoot Indians, who set the building on fire, killed the station operator, and drove off the livestock. 4 soldiers from Company E of the 3rd California Volunteers had been left at Canyon Station for protection, but they were out getting water when the attack started, and were set upon by 18 warriors. Only 2 of them survived. These events set in motion the Goshoot War of 1863, and major hostilities quickly broke out all along the 225-mile trail from Shell Creek to Salt Lake City. Days later, Captain S.P. Smith left Camp Douglas, Utah, located on the present-day University of Utah campus, with Company K of the 2nd California Volunteer Cavalry, and headed for 8 Mile Station on the overland route. It was one of several fortified outposts used to defend the route and keep it open, and they arrived there by the end of April. The overland route was further strengthened by Company E of the 3rd California Volunteer Infantry, who left Camp Douglas on May 5, 1863, with orders to protect the route from Salt Lake City to Austin. A few men were left at each station along that stretch of the overland route, and they would ride the stage from one station to the next and back, while the 2nd Cavalry scouted the area and patrolled the route. By early July of 1863, Canyon Station had been rebuilt in a new location, high above the mouth of Overland Canyon. It was manned by a new station operator and his assistant. It was also protected once again by 4 soldiers from Company E of the 3rd California Volunteer Infantry. They were Privates Lewis Pratt, Anthony Myers, Michael McNamara, and Thomas Grimshaw. Deseret News, July 15, 1863. 5 more men killed on the overland route. An attack was made by Indians on what is known as Canyon Station, near Deep Creek, on Wednesday, July 6th, which resulted in the killing of 4 soldiers and the station keeper, William Riley, whose father, we understand, is living at Provo, and also in the burning of the station house and barn with their contents, including 5 horses. The particulars of the affair, as stated in a letter from a telegraphic operator at Deep Creek to Major Egan, dated on the 10th, were in substance as follows. The Indians first shot Riley, who ran about 50 yards and fell dead. The fiends dragged his body back to the station, placed it on a pile of wood, and burned him alive. There were 4 soldiers there in the stable at the time, and they fired upon the Indians. 3 of the 4 men were wounded in the barn before they took out some horses, mounted them, and fled. McNamara, Myers, and Grimshaw made it about 300 yards before they were shot dead. The 4th man, Lewis B. Pratt, had his horse killed and was mortally wounded, but he escaped to Willow Station by the aid of some immigrants, where he soon after died. The station was completely destroyed by fire. 5 horses were burned in the barn. 1 was killed, and 2 are supposed to have been driven off by the Indians. The station's water hauler and 3 soldiers escaped death by the breaking down of their wagon. It appears that they were off somewhere for water at the time, and by some accident were detained a short time, and while at some considerable distance from the station, they saw it in flames, and retreated to Deep Creek for safety. It is reported that the volunteers, infantry and cavalry, along the road in that vicinity immediately commenced concentrating at or near Deep Creek, intending to scout the mountains for the purpose of finding and punishing the Indians. The futility of such movements not being understood, as yet, by those who have had excellent opportunities for learning that the mode of warfare and the measure adapted for the protection of the overland mail route have been and are productive of more evil than good. Despite the best efforts of the 3rd Infantry and 2nd Cavalry, the band of Indians who attacked Canyon Station were never found. Grimshaw and his fallen comrades were buried where they fell, and the commander of Company E, Captain Tupper, wrote this letter to Grimshaw's friend, Daniel Sewell, in Sonora, California. Sonora, July 11, 1863. Mrs. Grimshaw, I herewith send you a copy of a letter I received from Captain Tupper yesterday. Mr. Daniel Sewell, Sir, Thomas Grimshaw, who enlisted in my company 2 years ago, was killed by the Shoshone Indians at Canyon Station, between Ruby Valley and Salt Lake City, on or about the 2nd day of July this month. Grimshaw told me that he was acquainted with you, and requested of me that in the event of accident or death befalling him, to acquaint you of the fact, in order that the intelligence might reach his family, with whom he and you was acquainted also. Last November, he sent home to his family $50, which was received by them. The government owes him from date November 1st, 1862 to the time of his death, namely 8 months' salary, $104. His family should correspond with Colonel Ruggles, Deputy Paymaster, USA San Francisco, in deference to its collection. As you know where they live, you would confer a favor upon them by informing them of these facts and particulars. Thomas Grimshaw was a good soldier, and withal quite steady in his habits the past 18 months. Very respectfully, your obedient servant, Captain Tupper. Sonora, July 13th, 1863. P.S. Since writing the above, I have visited Captain Tupper, and he further informs me that your husband is entitled to the $100 bounty and $5 per month from the state extra, making a total of $244 you are entitled to. What other privileges may arise at the end of the war? Captain Tupper also recommended that you appoint either myself or some other person to settle up the affair for you, as you are so far distant. All I can say is if you cannot find proper authority to settle it for you nearer home, I will do all I can for you, and will not charge you, only my actual expenses, if I should be compelled to go to San Francisco to settle up the affair. It would cost $50 from here. That's including board, and a few days in San Francisco. I have not made any inquiries in regard to the settlement of the affair as yet, not knowing how you would endeavor to settle it nearer home. Since I wrote you last, I have changed my business. I am now in the photographic business, and proprietor of Rulofson's Art Gallery in Sonora. I forward you my picture in this letter. So with those few lines, I close from yours truly, Daniel Sewell. The Goshen War ended after California volunteers, led by Brigadier General Patrick E. Connor, attacked multiple Goshen camps and slaughtered over 100 men, women, and children. The Goshen Indians were forced to sign a treaty on October 12, 1863, that allowed the construction of roads, forts, mines, mills, telegraph lines, and railways across their lands. The building of farms, ranches, and towns was also permitted, and in return the Goshet were paid $1,000 a year for 20 years as compensation. With hostilities at an end, it was finally safe to return to Canyon Station, and in March of 1864, Thomas Grimshaw's remains were disinterred, along with the rest of those killed there a year earlier. They were carted back to Camp Douglas in pine boxes, and a large crowd from the surrounding area came to pay their respects. Since 4 of the dead were members of the Good Templars, their fellow members stationed at Camp Douglas were given permission to escort the funeral procession to the soldiers' cemetery, where Private Thomas Grimshaw was laid to rest on April 23, 1864.